buying real estate in Singapore doesn't produce cash flow.
18 properties in 4 years from all the way across the world.
I did all this in Singapore without stepping into the US, talk to people, understand the buying process, understand what renting means for the average people in the US.
It's a fear of the unknown. Buy this property that is somewhere else other than where I live and something goes wrong and I can't do anything about it. It's scary.
Find distressed property, get it below what it would appraise for the amount of work that you put in, get that false appreciation, pull it out when you refinance it and repeat.
Welcome to the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast, where we dive deep into the intersection of career, family, and finances. Learn the mindsets, tips, and strategies to help you on your personal journey to build a life of abundance and purpose for you and your family. Now here's your host, Aaron Amin. Welcome back to another episode of the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast. Today, I'm joined by one of the most infectiously positive, inspiring investors I know, Han from Byte Sized Investments. Han is taking the concept of long-distance real estate investing to a new level. He owns 18 properties in the United States, despite being based halfway across the world in Singapore. His real estate investing journey is only one dimension of his life, though. Han and his partner are also passionate about traveling, seeing the world, and finding ways to give back to causes that they care about. We cover the full arc of his story this episode, from his time in the Singapore military to his 6-month expedition in a conversion van across the United States. Every time I talk to Han, I leave with a new bout of inspiration. I'm excited to share his story with you. Let's get into it. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast. Today, I'm joined by my friend from all the way across the world in Singapore, Mr. Han from Byte Sized Investments. Han has an incredible story as an investor, and I'm just supremely impressed by the life and the lifestyle that you built for yourself. So I'd love for you to just tell a bit of your background in your own words, and then we can jump into it.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you guys. My name is Han, and I'm from Byte Sized Investments. I'm living in Singapore right now, and I own single families and some duplexes. And what I've managed to achieve is I've traveled US for the past 6 months and visited tons of places, all because of cash flowing rental properties. And I'm very lucky and blessed that I managed to chance upon this opportunity. Yeah. What I enjoy about is that not many places in the world is able to produce cash flow rental properties. So when you buy cash flow rental properties, they actually fund your lifestyle. They actually pays for your living expenses. And this allows you to, quit your day job and focus on things that matters to you, be it family, be it travels, your passion, your hobbies, and whatever goals that you want to do or whatever business that you want to create. So I've been pretty blessed that I managed to stumble upon this opportunity.
Yeah. So how did you stumble upon investing in rental properties in the United States from all the way in Singapore? What gave you that idea in the first place?
Yes, that's a great question. When I was during university, I stumbled upon this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that book was really life-changing. It helps me to understand what real assets are and what fake assets, liabilities are. And this got me and it taught me about financial freedom. And that was, game-changing, life-changing, because then it takes me out from the system, from being in the mouse wheel of a 9-to-5, got me thinking, do I want this 9-to-5 till 60, 65, and who knows, maybe 70 by the time we are near to our retirement age. So then it got me to start to think about investing. And Robert Kiyosaki talks a lot about flowing properties or cash flowing assets in general. So I started to study and research about it. In Singapore, property prices is high. So it took a while for me to figure out actually buying real estate in Singapore does produce wealth, but it doesn't produce cash flow. I have to explore the world, look elsewhere, and figure out where are the places where it could generate this. And at that time, real estate US was really very far away, and I haven't really visited and explored it. So it took a while for me So I started in stock investing, deal with dividend stocks and stuff like that. And slowly, as my experience grew and I traveled a few more places, and I finally traveled to US and see how things are. And then everything clicked. And actually, then it dawned upon me, why did I take so long to figure it out? Because when Robert Kiyosaki thought about it, obviously he's saying US properties. It took me so long. I was like searching in Thailand, Malaysia, Australia, and they don't really cash flow. Like it doesn't make sense there. So and when I started to jump into the rabbit hole of US cash flowing rental properties, I started to realize things that no other places have. 30 years fixed rate mortgages, rent growth. And if you think rent growth is common, it isn't. In Singapore, rent was flat for at least a decade. From 2012 to, maybe not a decade, but 2012 to 2017 to 18, it was like flat. And there are other places, there are quite a lot of places. I think even in Malaysia, there's no such thing as rent growth. They just stay stagnant for a long period of time. It was only after COVID, with the printing of money, things starts to get expensive. So then it became a no-brainer. Like, why would you want to place your funds and investments anywhere else except such good quality assets? And then I also studied and read about how debt actually doesn't keep up with inflation, while your asset prices and your rent keeps up with inflation. And then this when you like, it's mind-blowing. There's so many cheat code to how you can hack your wealth and hack your life to these things. So this got me really excited. And then I started research on cities, where are the best places, because there are so many places in the US, and like almost there's quite a few places that you can do it. It doesn't have to be like in one market. There's no secret to it. So many places you can do it. And this really makes like, that's when you realize that actually then it became so scalable. You don't have to do only in one place. And then after that, I started to research on all the like economy of the city, population growth, job growth, a bit of landlord and tenant laws and stuff like that. And then I started to network with people like in remotely from Singapore, because I did all this in Singapore without stepping into the US for a good chunk of time. Talk to people, understand the buying process, understand what renting means for the average people in the US. And yeah, slowly gain more confidence, because you must understand, not being a native, it's not that easy to, there's so many things you don't understand. You don't even know how to set up a bank account. You don't even know what does a contract entails in this country, for example. So there's really a lot of things. It took a while. So I studied, understand the process, understand the economy, understand the business. And then, so once everything fall into places, they're like, okay, let's buy. And then guess what happens? COVID happens. Yeah, I was doing all the research right before COVID. And then when COVID happens, then you start to think, oh no, what's going to happen? And that was the start of COVID. But I think we were pretty convicted. Me and my partner was doing this thing. And so we're pretty convicted. It was like, okay, never mind. Let's just try it. So we bought our first rental property for $51,000. Yeah, it was crazy. It was sitting on the market for, I think, a year. The price dropped from, they listed it at 80 and then it slowly dropped down to 70. That was how markets was back then. And I forgot to mention, I'm investing, I started in Columbus, Ohio. And so properties were like in decent B neighborhoods was like 70, 80 grand. So we were looking at it and it was like, okay, why not try it? And so we got into contract, we did our due diligence. Yeah, and obviously COVID happened. So we were like, okay, there's a lot of uncertainty. The property needs a bit of work. So yeah, we worked with our property manager and he was saying that it needs like 20 grand of work that needs to be done. Basement needs to do a bit of stuff. So yeah, so we counted at 50 and we managed to finalize the purchase price at $51,000. And yeah, so then that's where I got my first cash flowing rental property. I got my first property, and within a few weeks, I managed to get my first rent check. And when you get the first rent check in your bank account, you're like, oh my God, is this for real? Like, we did the work at the start. But from then to the time you got your rent check, it's like you did not do anything. It's like it is amazing. It's life changing. It's like we need to do more of this. So yeah, and we try to sell some of our stocks. I try to sell some of my stocks, raise capital, raise funds on my raise funds on my side, and started to buy more and more properties. So yeah, in that was 2020, and now it's like 2024. We have 18 properties. And looking at the cash flow is, no regrets, man. That there's no turning back. We hope to slowly grow our portfolio more to be able to increase the quality of life that we have, and then to be able to then use that cash flow to grow our other businesses. We like to do social enterprise. We like to set up animal sanctuaries, or for me, I like to do urban farming, promote sustainable living. So if I can then funnel this excess capital to grow and develop that sort of social enterprise and that social cause, I think that will be a dream come true.
That's
Yeah.
amazing, man. I not only just the process of falling in love and discovering about investing, and you read the book, and that so many people talk about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and the concepts in there and how those change the way you think. And once you change the way you think about assets and liabilities and cash flow, being an employee versus being a business owner, all these things, it's hard to see. Once you go that route, it's hard to go back. Then it's only a matter of time before you find the right thing that resonates with you. And for most people that go through that book and the discovery, real estate ends up being the answer. But I love what you were explaining about how you started looking in Thailand and Malaysia and a couple of the places near you. And you learned that, the rent growth was flat in those areas, and the debt, the types of loans you could get were different and they weren't as advantageous. I think it's just incredible because so many people struggle with the idea of investing even 1 hour away from their house. In the US, a lot of people struggle, understandably, right? It's a fear of the unknown. It's a fear of, what if I buy this property that is somewhere else other than where I live and something goes wrong and I can't do anything about it? It's scary, but you obviously were able to grapple with that and you were able to figure that out. So much so that you're confident in being all the way across the world, even when you owned a house in Columbus, Ohio. So one of the first questions I have for you about your journey is, how did you approach property management and make the connections so that you felt comfortable being halfway across the world from your properties?
Yeah, so let's talk about the second part first on how do you feel comfortable, because I think once you have that, then you find the solutions to solve that. Yeah, it's all about identifying the potential problems, and then after that, ask questions on how to solve it. So it's, what if I can't find a tenant? Then you start to, instead of saying, what if I can't find a tenant, and stop there and make it a conclusion instead of a question, then you stop there. You will not go and find the answer. And that's the end of the thread. That's it, full stop. Jump to the next topic. But if you pursue, then you start to, why would there be no tenant? Then you'll be like, okay, there's no tenant. Why? Because it's priced too high, or because there's no one there, or there's no demand and stuff like that. So then you start to, okay, so if price too high, then you just adjust the rent. And if there's no demand, then you just find neighborhoods or cities where there is people growing there and there is a need for housing shortage. And maybe because people are not wanting to rent your place is because it is not a good product. It is not renovated nicely. It is not rehabbed nicely, stuff like that. So then that's where you start to identify and then solve the problem. Okay, so I need to have money to then do the rehabs, to do the fix, to make it to good quality. So then that means my purchase process must include and factor these considerations. When I buy it, what is the condition? How much do I have to make it in rent-ready condition? And then what is the purchase price in order to make my numbers pencil out? So these are the things that we have to consider before going to the next step. And then when it comes to the property manager, it was a slight challenge because there were tons of property managers in the area. And then me being like a foreigner, I have not worked with any property managers as a tenant and even as an investor. So there was a lot of grappling to go around. YouTube helped a bit. And then after that, articles, there were research a lot of articles. And then we came up with like 100 questions to ask the property managers. So that's what we did. We asked the property managers 100 questions. It started with emailing like 20 questions. After emailing the 20 questions, then we was like, okay, let's set up a call. And then in the call, we set up another 20 questions, another 30 questions. And then they just got tired and frustrated and it's like stuff like that. So then we realized, oh, okay, maybe that's not the way to go. Like they are all rejecting us. Like, aren't I supposed to be the client? Why am I rejected?
Yeah.
So we start to streamline the questions and ask the things that matters. Yeah, and then we managed to make a few good rapports. And because we want property managers that respond on emails than making calls and texts because of the time differences. If nothing is urgent, email and text is the best. Sorry, email is the best. Text and call is second. Like urgent, then we do it. Yeah, so then that helps to filter quite a bit of them, and they must have technology so that we can log in. We don't want to have Excel spreadsheets and hard copy book. Okay, this is the rent. Okay. And then they collect, they send you rent checks and stuff like that. We want stuff that do ACH or direct deposit and stuff like that. Yeah. And then after that, we try to get the vibes of whether the property managers is aligned. There are some property managers that are in there just for the money. There's nothing to hide. But there are some that are there for the passion. They really enjoy doing it and they are so professional about it. They know every single issue, no matter how many doors they have under management. And I was very fortunate that I eventually worked with one that is that professional. He knows every single issues on hand and he can tell you the details of the issues. And that blows my mind. So that's how eventually I selected that property manager and worked with them.
That's amazing. So I love what you said at the beginning of your answer, which is that it's not just about buying some random house in a random city and saying, oh, great, I'm going to make cash flow now. You're saying, no, I'm going to research the market. I'm going to try and understand, is there population growth? Are there jobs here? Are there factors that would make this a desirable place to live as a city? And then you look at the individual neighborhoods and you try and say, is this a declining or an up and coming neighborhood? And then you look at the house itself and say, is this falling apart? Is it a nice place? Would I want to live there? And you consider all of those things. And then the team members that support you, like the property manager, you're giving them an easier job if you give them a nice product to sell in a desirable location. So there's that piece, which I think is really smart, right? Because if you can feel confident about the research you've done on the house that you're offering on, you're going to feel you're going to sleep better at night knowing that, okay, this is in a good area. This is going to work out in the long run if I run this business well. And then the second part you said is that you interviewed several property managers. You guys were very thorough with your questioning, so much so that you even had to figure out how to streamline it. But you asked, I'm sure, based on what I know of you and how you've described yourself so far, good questions. You weren't just, what's the name of your company and when are you going to send my check? You were probably asking them questions about how they operate as a business. What are their hours of operation? Do they take calls on weekends? How do they deal with tenants? Again, if you were renting your own house, would you want to be dealing with these people? So I've always known this about you too, is that you care about the experience your tenants have too. And so when you put all that together, that's how you run a good business, right? Is you have a good product, you have good representation and forward client-facing people on your team. And then you yourself are paying attention to the things that are important and continuing to operate it in a way that's in line with your own values. And that is not very easy to put together for anyone, let alone halfway around the world. And I love that you said you have 18 properties now in 4 years. And again, that's from all the way across the world. But it sounds like you must have at some point tapped into either a strategy of maybe raising money or doing some rehab work and cashing some money out. Can you talk about how did you get that snowball rolling down the hill?
Yeah, that's very sharp of you. Yeah. 18 properties is no easy feat, I must say. Work our ass off to get to this level. But yeah, so basically we employed the BRRRR method, the BR, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat, right? And that helped us to accelerate the capital that we need. So, and we were lucky, we got quite a few due before the pandemic inflation. So we got them during the COVID period, but a few of them were bought when the market froze. So those that were selling, they were a little bit more, they were able to, they wanted to let it go, whatever price that makes sense to them. So we were able to get them at a very good value. And then when the interest finally dropped for a while and people started to realize the value and money printing and stuff like that, then asset prices start to stall. So that's where we got our, not only did we do forced appreciation on our rehabs, we also got that little tailwind. So that grew our equity by a mile. And we were able to then pull the equity out and redeploy them into the next property. Initially, when we started, BRRRR was not the main strategy that we want to do it. But those situations then puts us through that process and we're like, okay, we somehow just did a BRRRR and it ain't that hard. So is this something that we can repeat again? We're thinking, actually, it is definitely repeatable. Find distressed property, get it below what it would appraise for the amount of work that you put in, get that forced appreciation, pull it out when you refinance it and repeat it. So we just continue to do it, repeating and repeating to grow our asset. So initially we grew organically. And then after that, from all this, but when we saw great deals, then and we were tapped out, we started to did private money lending. And that helped to, grow our asset even further. So yeah, and when we do private money lending, it's also the BRRRR model where we, of course, we took a bridging loan at the start, and then we buy it and did rehab it, rent it out, and when we refinance it, we return the capital back to our private money lenders. So that helped us to grow our portfolio or assets to wherever it is right now.
I love it. Yeah, that's so like you said, you started with a more organic strategy. When you bought that first house, you probably did it in a more traditional way and you got the first rent check and you said, oh, I need to do more. So then you always got to figure out, okay, what's next? You had some help from the appreciation during COVID with all the inflation and the money printing. And then you realized that you could tap into that equity and start redeploying it. That's the dream, right? And then you started adding more tools, it sounds like. So you learned how to raise private money as a bridge loan and then use that temporarily while you're doing this rehab and then refinance it with a bank to pay off the lenders. That is literally a snowball, right? Like you can keep doing that over and over again as long as it's within your capacity to manage. So the rehab portion, right? So there's a couple of things. One is just knowing how to do that. And two is the people that you have on the ground managing it. So how did you become comfortable with rehabbing? Did you ever done anything construction related before? Or did you read books? Or how did you learn that process? And then second, who do you have running it on the ground?
Yeah, great question. And I think this is one of the challenges that a remote real estate professional have to grapple with. The rehab portion, it started with a leap of faith because, like I mentioned, the first property that we bought, it was quite distressed. So there was quite a long list of work to have to do. Fortunately, at that point of time, how do I say it? That we don't have a lot of properties. It was just the first one. It's like it became your baby. You really pay a lot of attention to it and you really learned. So it started with books, and the property manager was the one that did the rehab. And like I mentioned, they were pretty patient. They really assure you and handhold you through the process. So it got me pretty confident. It was not cheap, obviously, but that's the price that you have to pay for doing it remotely and not being. I don't have to swing the hammer myself. Why would you? There's a cost of money for it. There's a cost of time for it. It was a price that I was willing to pay. And then to help to make the process even more comfortable, they sent photos whenever they did the rehab at intervals. They will send you photos, and so you see the progress, and then you know that things are moving in the right direction. Yeah, and that one gave me the confidence that actually, hey, it is not impossible to do it remotely, and we have to sometimes really trust the person. We have to vet very stringently. But once we vet them already, we have to trust them that they know what they are doing. And and not micromanage them. Let them do what they need to do as long as the bottom line is achieved. Is it a good product? Is it on time, on budget? Yep. And is there accountability? Once you have those, then you just have to let them run the show and repeat and continue to give them business.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Remote Real Estate Academy, the community I launched last year where I personally coach investors and empower them to buy rental properties anywhere in the United States. My business partner Nathan and I have a collective 15 years experience with over 20 cash flowing out-of-state rental properties. We provide a step-by-step playbook on how you can build your own portfolio and start accessing the life-changing benefits of real estate investing starting today. Go to remoterealestateacademy.com for more info, or better yet, shoot me an email at aaron@aaronamin.com with subject line RREA, and I'll throw in a special bonus for podcast listeners who join the Academy. Now let's get to the show. So your property manager is there project managing? So he's hiring out the contractors and making sure they're sticking to the schedules, and then you get an update from the property manager, right? Is that how it works?
Yeah, that was how the first project started.
And then so from the first one, I'm sure you were, like you said, you were more involved because it was your only one. It was you were learning, you were really, I'm sure, just like right there in it. Whereas now you have 18 and you're also probably more experienced, more relaxed. So when you're traveling around the country or around the world, you're probably not micromanaging all these different projects all at the same time. So did your property manager know or did you know when you first started working together that it was going to turn into this big, did you think it was just going to be one and done? Or did you think, no, I want to make this into 18, 20, 30 properties?
When I first started, it was like a trial. And I was thinking, maybe I'm good. Then once, like when we mentioned, when you first get the rent check, you start to realize actually this is something doable. This is something doable and this is something good. You want more of it. So you start to then figure out how can I get a bit more. And then, and you have to try to see how you can get comfortable with, because more assets actually do require a bit more attention as time passes by, because then you have more statements to look at, you have more details to remember for each one. When there's a repair that needs to be done, you don't have to micromanage, but you do still hope that the item is closed. And so then you instead of, when you have one property, maybe every few months you have one item to have it in your mind. Then when you have 18, then maybe you're constantly having one or two items in your mind. So to answer you, no, I did not think about being able to own that many, but because our reality grew, when you have one, then you have two, when you have three, then you have four, then you realize actually it is really possible to have maybe 100. So then you start to get there to really do the things to realize this goal.
Yeah, no, I love it. One of the reasons I asked is because when you're interviewing these property managers, you're asking them 100 questions. Sometimes they're going to wonder, like, is this person even going to become a customer? Are they even going to grow? People wonder, is the person I'm talking to on the other end of the phone serious about what they're doing? And that's one of the things we teach in our academy is like, how do you become someone who follows through with what they say they're going to do? If you're going to take up somebody's time and interview them about representing you as an agent or a property manager, you got to be prepared to invest in that relationship too and follow through with what you say you're going to do. Otherwise, people are going to not answer your calls, right? Or they're not going to take you seriously. So I think the fact that you started on such thorough basis and you were very serious about how you set up your business, and then you found a relationship where it was win, and then you just doubled down on that and you kept going and going. And I'm sure that made you guys, your relationship stronger. And now you have so much history together that it's so much easier for you to trust the quality of the work, right? Because you've done it now. So a lot of the work in my mind, being a remote investor is at the beginning. It's doing the research. It's being comfortable with the area that you're focusing on. It's building a buy box that you know is going to work for your goals. It's building a team and interviewing people, which takes some time. takes some effort and it takes some judgment, right? You got to really think long and hard about the people you're choosing to have on your team. But once you find that, and once you find a good fit, then the real magic can happen, right? Because you can just keep feeding the machine instead of having to reinvent all your processes and everything every single time you buy a new property. So I'm very impressed the approach you took from the beginning, like you were talking about, with just having that curiosity and exploring that, all the way down to actually executing and breaking through any fear you have just by having a confident, thoughtful approach. I love every part of your story as an investor, but your investor story is only a part of your story. A couple of things I want to touch on. Before you became an investor, what were you doing for your career?
Oh, I work in the military. Yeah, I work for the Singapore Army. Yeah. And it was a very interesting job. I took up this assignment was because I like nature. I like to go camping. That job offered me quite a lot of camping opportunities. Yeah. And that's why I jumped into it. I was in that career for a good, I think, 12 years or more, maybe more. 12 to 14 years. Yeah, 12 to 14 years. It gave me a very good experience because of working experience, because when you deal with large organizations, like even in the US military, they are very structured, they are very bureaucratic, they are processes. And then it helps me to understand how I should structure business in the end. Because in the end, it's not about one man running the entire show, doing everything. So then it's more chaotic that way, but it's more fluid but it's more chaotic that way. But when you have a larger organizations, there are processes, there are structure, there are decision making processes, there are decision boxes, matrix to help you decide. And then so I take a lot of all these things into my businesses on how do I run my real estate business, on how do I run all my other side projects that I have. So it's been a very good experience. It also saved a lot of money when I was working there. And it helped me to then have the funds to do all these things that matters. And obviously the network is great too when I am able to meet a lot of people, learn from them and tap on their experiences. And it helps to then shape me to who I am today. I have great leaders. Yeah, fortunate to have great leaders.
That's amazing. Yes. So one of the themes of this show, right, the hybrid real estate professional, is that people have a lot of skills and experiences in their life that they've gone through that maybe they think they aren't relevant or they can't see a connection to the current moment. But we all have so much experience that we tend to discount, and everything is important, right? Good and bad experiences are what shape you, and they're what create the version of you that you are right now. And so all the skills you talked about and the experiences you had in your old job and being in the military and the discipline that comes with that and the operational
Yes.
mentality, of course, that has a huge impact on how you run your business as a real estate investor. And I also love that you mentioned that it gave you an opportunity to go camping and be outside, which is clearly a passion of yours. And that was the next thing I was going to ask you about, right? Is this love for travel and how you were able to take this big 6-month long trip and just go. We were talking before we hit record. You've seen more of the United States at this point almost than I have. And you did it in such a beautiful way where you and your partner, you guys had a van and you traveled and you saw all the nature that you could possibly want. And yeah, just talk to us a little bit about that trip.
Yeah, me and my partner bought a van and we shipped it to a builder to convert it so that at the back of the van, we have living stuff. So we have the bed, we have the kitchen, we have the fridge, we have sink, we can shower, we can do all our businesses there in the van. Yeah, and internet also. So that was how we designed it so that the goal was to be able to live in the van, travel in the van, work in the van, regardless of whatever weather it is, be it summer, be it winter. So it has heaters, it has fans, it has stuff like that. So yeah, it is our second home when we are not when we are not in Singapore. It's our second home in the US. It helps us to save money, save cost, because then you don't have to rent a car, you don't have to rent hotels. So that's also another consideration. So we shipped it to a van builder in Pennsylvania. And when they are done, we took a trip. We went north to Ithaca to see all the amazing waterfalls. Then we swing over to Buffalo and Niagara, then travel across Canada, visited one of my friends in Toronto, cross over to Michigan, Detroit, take a look at some of the suburbs, do some scouting, maybe because that might be some of the other cities that I may want to invest in. Then we went down to Indiana, also did some research there. And then we crossed over to Illinois, Iowa, visited some of the friends that I have connected on social media and met them in person. Went over to Nebraska, Omaha, took photo of Buffett's house. You have to do that. I think we swung up to South Dakota, and then we traveled in the national parks in Wyoming, Montana. Yeah, visited Badlands, Bighorn Canyons, amazing places. And then after that, we continued through Idaho to Seattle, to Washington State. And that's where we picked up our family, my partner Tracy, her family joining us. So when we design our van, we make sure that we have a seat with seat belt at the back of the van, like a foldable one where you can store it, and then you can bring it down so that they can sit on the van. So we actually took our family to around that Pacific Northwest, Seattle, Washington State, Idaho, and Oregon. I visited a lot of nature places like Olympic National Park, St. Helens, John Day Fossil Beds. And it was mind-blowing to see the geography and to understand the history. It's so rich in the area. I spent in the visitor center just reading up on how this place came to be. And that's theoretical. When you go out and you see the stuff that is there, and then you see the layers and you see the different rock formations and what is there, then it awes you because what you are seeing is millions and millions years ago of stuff that you are seeing. And it's like we are a speckle of what this entire Earth history is. And you start to appreciate how things came to be and how things would be in the future just by looking at all these things. Like when you see the canyon, what you are seeing actually is how the earth is being formed and then how the river cuts through the landscape over millions and millions of years. And then you know this physical effect is going to continue millions and millions of years in the future. And it's just mind-blowing to be able to appreciate these things that's happening. And yeah, the landscape is really very amazing. It's very different from what we get to see in Singapore. And we were able to do this really because of the cash flow that's being generated by our real estate.
I know
Yeah.
it's cliche to say it, right? But you're living the dream. Most people would love the opportunity to be able to, at a younger age, have enough cash flow coming in from their business to support them. And so they can go have these life experiences that are so meaningful. And like when hearing you describe the feeling of looking out at nature and just being able to pontificate about the meaning of life and our place in it all, most people are too busy working and getting stressed out about day-to-day stuff that it's hard to have thoughts like that because you're so distracted by everyday life and how fast-paced it is and all that anxiety that it's hard to spread out and just let yourself be in the moment like that. So that's another beautiful benefit of you guys have built a business now that's self-sustaining. You have 18 properties, even if something goes wrong at 1 or 2 or 3 at the same time, you got enough momentum that you can probably self-sustain without you having to pull a bunch of money out. And not only that, but you guys are able to fund really cool experiences like the one you just described. So I think that's great. I want to know, so you mentioned one thing at the beginning, and this will probably be the last topic we have time for, but social enterprises and charity, philanthropy. You guys, it sounds like you have some causes that you are really passionate about, ways to give back. I forget the exact ones you mentioned, but can you tell us a little more about what are some of the things that you and Tracy like to either donate to or be involved in to give back?
Yeah, thanks for asking that and to allow me the opportunity to share because that is really truly the reason why we are going through the hustles of buying a real estate remotely and stuff like that. Like the end goal is really to have a social cause and to solve the social cause. So I believe that human activities does affect the degradation of our environment. So I think we can do a little bit more to help this cause. And if we love our future generations, if we love our kids and we want to live the world where we see it, or if not better for them and not worse off. And I think we are able to do something for that. So there's a few social cause that I want to do. I'm passionate about urban farming, about sustainable living. I mean, being in a city in Singapore, there's really not much you can do. So a lot of people, actually we can do a lot. It's just figuring it out and then doing it. A lot of people like how investing remotely is, they are put off when there's a bit of challenges. So they stop there. But actually, once you figure that out, it's actually not difficult at all. All you have to do is just go through the motion. What I want to support is urban farming, sustainable living, composting. I think composting is amazing. Singapore, we burn our trash. We don't throw it in land dumps. So if we could reduce more things that we throw in the trash by composting it, by turning all this trash into gold, you can actually take this compost and then put it in the soil, and it will nourish the vegetable that you grow, and then you can eat them. So that you have, little to no waste. And that's something that I really want to do, and I will want to figure out how do I then collect everyone's food waste and then repurpose them into valuable stuff. Me and Tracy enjoys going to Japan, having holiday there. We even thought of buying our holiday home in Japan, like a $1 IKEA, and then converting them into a very nice, rustic, like how the samurai houses are. And then we have an Airbnb out there. And then we want to get a kelp farm off the coast of Hokkaido so that we can then, kelp is like the vegetables on earth. On land, they actually clean, they recycle, they take waste in the water, and then they convert them into energy, into food, right? You can use the kelp as food to eat. You can use it as fuel for cars. That's what I read. So then that's what we want to do. We want to be able to do a kelp farm, be able to clean the ocean there, and then take this kelp to Singapore and to promote sustainable eating. So these are some of the things that we want to do. Tracy is very passionate about animals. She wants to then be able to do animal sanctuary, be able to fund and support animal sanctuaries in whatever vision that she wants to do. So that's what we all want to try to get to. And that's why we are still trying to work hard to be able to buy more properties, fix them, rehab them, give good quality products to tenants. And then after that, channel these funds, this capital, eventually to all these social enterprises that we want to do. But at the same time, I also want to share that I think being a landlord, there's a lot of responsibility to be a landlord, because there are landlords that unfortunately just want to extract as much value and not give a good product to their clients, their customers, which is the tenant. So I think this is something that we do also want to do, because when we interact with some of the tenants, we do realize that actually they're bullied by landlords. So I think this is something that the community, that your community, I think my community should be more aware of, that we need to take care of the tenants and give them a good product. And when they have issues, we try to work with them. Process is process, but we do try to work with them on things. So for example, recently, we had one of our tenants is having some financial difficulties. Instead of going through the process, give them the 3-day notice, after that, throw them to court for eviction, we do try to figure out, give them grace. And if grace can't solve the problem, then we try to reach out to organizations for rent assistance and stuff like that. We help work with them on these things. So I think this is something that I'm starting to figure out and realize that, hey, I have my social enterprises, but actually, if I can solve this thing, then actually I can grow my business even bigger. I can serve more people, especially this group of people. And then this can help me then I can make more money because I'm serving more. Then I can make more money, and then I can then deploy them into my social causes. And of course, maybe take some of it and put it on myself to improve my quality of living by doing more van trips.
I love it, man. It's all connected. It started with something you were passionate about, drawing from experience you had from the previous part of your life in the military. You have a strong partnership, who you have a partner who you guys are in this business together. You've built something, you've figured out a process, you've built a team, you've done the research and put in the work. And you've also been able to celebrate along the way, taking trips and just building that cash flow into being a self-sustaining business. And now you're also able to start pouring into causes that you care about. That is really the ultimate funnel, is taking your passion and turning it into something meaningful. And not only for you, but for the people that you serve. The fact that you care about the experience your tenants are having means you're providing a good, comfortable place to live for people who need it. You're taking properties that need work and you're putting the work in to make them look nice and feel nice. You're improving places. You're improving in actual structures in actual places and making neighborhoods more valuable. You have that input, and then you're also living your life. So I love your story, man. I'm so glad we finally got you on the show. Hopefully this won't be the last time. Next time we'll be celebrating 36 properties, right? At the pace you're going, you're going to double in another couple of years. But thank you so much. Is there anywhere else? I know you run your own community and you have a couple courses. You want to tell us a couple things about that before we sign off?
Yeah, okay. I have an online course. It's called Remote Cashflow Rentals. And it teaches foreign, non-US citizens on how to buy cash flowing rental properties from mindsets, being ready to be a business owner, to be able to overcome challenges, to figuring out solutions and selecting the right market for the right strategy that you want, to running your numbers, doing your due diligence, to how to build your team, the purchase process as a remote non-US citizens, right? And how to manage it, how to manage your team remotely, and how to monetize your assets. You can either sell them or you can refinance them. So this is what the course provides, and it's online. You can do it on pace, on your own time, on your own pace, whenever you want it. It can be on mobile, it can be on the laptop, whichever it is. Yeah, my socials, like you can find me on IG, Facebook, YouTube, X, or Twitter. I prefer to call it Twitter. Yeah, it's at Byte Sized Investments, at BYTESIZEDINVESTMENTS. Yep.
Awesome. We'll include all those links in the show notes. I have encountered a lot of people that they do live overseas and they're like, I don't even know if I can invest in the US or not. So the fact that you made a course about that is very valuable for a lot of people, I'm sure. I won't take any more of your time, but thank you so much for coming on the show. I had a blast, and I know everyone that listens to this is going to learn a lot about not only how to run a successful real estate business, but just how to get after it in life and do what you're passionate about. So thank you again.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
Thank you for making it to the end of today's episode. As you may know, podcasts are very difficult to grow organically. If you're getting value from today's episode, I'd deeply appreciate if you can take 30 seconds to leave my show a 5-star rating and review. This will go a long way to helping me reach more listeners just like you. Thank you so much in advance.